when my mother came back about a week later, I just got such hell for this. How you could upset me.
Lee Radziwill, sister of former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, passed away at 85. While Jacqueline's legacy is widely known, few are aware of the complex relationship the sisters shared. Often overshadowed by Jackie's fame, Lee forged her own path as a style icon and socialite, frequently appearing on best-dressed lists and captivating the elite world. Their bond, marked by both admiration and rivalry, remained largely private. Now, with intimate insights from Lee's daughter, we uncover the untold story of their sisterhood, one shaped by elegance, ambition, and a lifelong struggle for identity in the public eye. Before we explore the story behind Lee's daughter's confirmation, let's take a look at Lee's royal life and accomplishments, which were hidden behind her sister's shadow. Let's dive in. Childhood and beginnings. Caroline Lee Bouvier was born in 1933 at Doctors Hospital in Manhattan, New York City. Her parents were John Vernou Blackjack Bouvier III, a successful stockbroker, and Janet Norton Lee, a well-known socialite. From birth, she was commonly called by her middle name, Lee, a name that stayed with her throughout her life. Lee grew up alongside her older sister Jacqueline, who later married John F. Kennedy and became First Lady. Their childhood was mainly spent on Park Avenue, with peaceful summer retreats in the Hamptons offering a break from city life. Although Lee attended several secondary schools during her youth, she received a strong education thanks to the prestigious institutions she attended. These included Miss Porter's School in Farmington, Connecticut, the Potomac School in Washington, D.C., and the Chapin School in New York City. She continued her studies at Sarah Lawrence College, where she pursued an undergraduate degree and spent a year in Italy studying art during her sophomore year. Lee's father, nicknamed Black Jack for his gambling habits, was a prominent figure on Wall Street, but struggled with personal issues, including drinking and affairs, which led to his separation from the family when Lee was young. Despite the family difficulties, the Bouviers maintained their social standing in New York. After her parents' divorce, Lee and Jacqueline lived with their mother, who remarried Hugh D. Auchincloss, bringing them into a larger blended family. Though Lee made her debut into high society in 1950, she often felt overshadowed by Jacqueline, who was viewed as the favored daughter. This dynamic influenced Lee's personal life and career ambitions. What exactly did her daughter reveal about Lee's experience? Stay tuned to find out. Lee's marital struggles and multiple affairs. Lee was very particular about choosing a life partner, following a strict three-strike rule. At 21, on April 18, 1953, she married publishing executive Michael Temple Canfield. Her biological father proudly gave her away, fulfilling Lee's childhood dream of a fairy tale wedding. At first, Michael seemed like the ideal match, charming, intelligent, well-connected, and offering a way to escape her mother's influence. The couple settled into a beautiful home in Chester Square, London, and enjoyed a blissful honeymoon period filled with love and hope. However, Michael struggled with severe alcoholism, which soon cast a dark shadow over their marriage. Despite his prestigious role as head of Harper & Brothers and his refined upbringing, his addiction proved impossible to overcome. Lee witnessed the harsh realities when Michael was found unconscious in their home. Although he made brief attempts to quit drinking, these efforts didn't last, causing increasing strain between them. During this difficult time, Lee found comfort and love with Polish-Lithuanian Prince Stanisław Albrecht Radziwill. However, her marriage to Michael had to end before she could marry the prince. The Kennedy family, including Jacqueline and John F. Kennedy, used their influence to petition the Pope and the Vatican to grant Lee a divorce, which they succeeded in doing. On March 19, 1959, Lee married Prince Stanisław, marking her second marriage and entry into royalty. Interestingly, rumors circulated that Michael Canfield might have been the illegitimate son of Prince George, Duke of Kent, which could have made him a prince too. Lee and Stanisław had two children, Anthony and Christina, and lived near Buckingham Palace, embracing their royal lifestyle. However, their marriage eventually fell apart due to Prince Stanisław's numerous affairs and Lee's growing relationship with Greek shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis. Lee was also rumored to have had an affair with photographer Peter Beard. The couple divorced in 1974. In a final search for lasting love, Lee married film director Herbert Ross in 1988, known for hits like Steel Magnolias and The Goodbye Girl. They wed in her Fifth Avenue apartment and celebrated with a private luncheon at Jackie Kennedy's home. Despite their efforts, the marriage ended in divorce in 2001. Lee described Herbert as someone truly unique. Throughout all of this, her sister Jacqueline remained her longest and closest supporter. Now, let's delve deeper into their complex relationship. Bond with Jacqueline, the beginning of a lifelong story. Lee and her sister Jacqueline shared a close bond, even though Lee often felt overshadowed by her more famous sibling. Their relationship was especially strong during Jacqueline's time as First Lady, as they spent many important moments together: family holidays, state events, and visits to the White House. The sisters also hosted the Kennedys at their London home. One unforgettable experience was their month-long 1962 trip through Italy, India, and Pakistan, which strengthened their connection. The Kennedy family honored Lee by naming their first daughter, Caroline, after her, and President Kennedy personally blessed Lee's daughter, Anna Christina Radziwill. Everything changed after President Kennedy's assassination in 1963. Lee immediately flew from London to Washington, D.C. to support Jacqueline during the darkest days. She stood by her sister as Jacqueline bore the heavy burden of public mourning, carrying the president's coffin to lie in state, and attending the funeral at the Cathedral of St. Matthew, the Apostle. At Arlington National Cemetery, Lee was deeply moved, even shedding tears as Air Force One dipped its wing in tribute. Despite her own grief, Lee admired Jacqueline's courage, often leaving notes on her sister's pillow to offer love and encouragement. She supported Jacqueline through the difficult transition out of the White House, helping her move to diplomat W. Averell Harriman's Georgetown home. Later, Lee assisted Jacqueline in settling into New York City, finding her an apartment just blocks away on Fifth Avenue. Though they appeared inseparable and their sisterly love seemed strong, tensions would eventually arise, especially over personal and romantic matters, complicating their lifelong relationship. Sister versus sister. The strain, feud, and jealousy. Lee Radziwill and Aristotle Onassis, the famous Greek shipping magnate known for his charm and romantic escapades, were often rumored to be involved romantically. But these whispers were never fully confirmed. Aristotle had been a longtime friend of the Radziwill family, and his presence in their social circles was nothing unusual given their status in elite high society. Lee and her then-husband, Prince Stanisław Radziwill, frequently entertained Aristotle at their London home and spent time on his luxurious yacht, the Christina. The tension between Lee and her sister Jacqueline Kennedy began to surface in August 1963, when Lee invited Jacqueline to join a cruise on Aristotle's yacht after the premature birth and tragic death of Jacqueline's third child, Patrick. Seeking privacy and solace, Jacqueline accepted the invitation and embarked on an extended journey across the Aegean Sea with Lee and the Radziwill family. This trip marked a turning point in the sisters' relationship. According to Diana Dubois's 1995 biography, In Her Sister's Shadow, an intimate biography of Lee Radziwill, Aristotle became captivated by Jacqueline during the voyage, much to Lee's dismay. Lee maintained to close friends that her invitation was intended purely to help Jacqueline heal during her grief, but she felt deeply betrayed by how Jacqueline seemed to manipulate Aristotle's attention. This perceived manipulation drove a wedge between the sisters that would only grow wider over time. Contemporary news reports suggested that Jacqueline's closeness with Aristotle, combined with her developing relationship with Robert Kennedy following President Kennedy's assassination, began to redefine the sisters' dynamic permanently. During the yacht trip, the chemistry between the three shifted notably. Aristotle, a man known for his influence and charisma, increasingly focused on Jacqueline, sidelining Lee in the process. The strong bond the sisters once shared began to fracture. Lee confided to friends that she felt overshadowed and robbed of something precious, as if Jacqueline had claimed something that was rightfully hers. Jacqueline's decision to spend time with Aristotle during such a vulnerable period added complexity to their already strained relationship. The world watched as the glamorous First Lady sought refuge aboard the lavish yacht, fueling media speculation about the nature of her relationship with Aristotle, deepening the rift between the sisters even further. Adding to the strain was Jacqueline's growing intimacy with Robert Kennedy after President Kennedy's assassination. The shared trauma and the public and private responsibilities that followed brought Jacqueline and Robert closer, further isolating Lee. This combination of events, the aftermath of the assassination, Jacqueline's bond with Aristotle, and her deepening relationship with Robert, transformed what had been a close sisterly connection into one marked by distance and tension. Robert Kennedy reportedly provided Jacqueline with profound emotional support in the months after her husband's death. Their frequent, intense conversations sparked rumors that their relationship might have extended beyond friendship. Although nothing was ever proven, these rumors stirred considerable public and private controversy. In June 1968, while Lee was in London, she was devastated to learn of Robert Kennedy's assassination. The shock caused her to lose control of her car, resulting in a collision. Jacqueline, even more shattered, felt that America had become unsafe for anyone bearing the Kennedy name, deciding she must leave the country for her safety. Aristotle Onassis stepped in at this critical moment, providing Jacqueline with the means to escape. Following this, they began a romantic relationship sealed by a prenuptial agreement that guaranteed Jacqueline millions of dollars. In 1968, 5 years after President Kennedy's assassination, Jacqueline married Aristotle in a highly publicized ceremony on his private island, Scorpios. The wedding, attended by Lee, was a sensational event that attracted intense media scrutiny, the kind of coverage typical of tabloid headlines. Many viewed Jacqueline's marriage to Aristotle as a strategic move to protect herself and her children after the series of violent personal losses she had endured. Aristotle's vast wealth and influence offered her a sense of security and stability that she desperately needed. Lee, despite the lingering tensions between them, supported her sister during the wedding and afterward. In later interviews, Lee laughed off persistent rumors that she herself had been romantically involved with Aristotle, firmly denying any such affair. Yet, even casual observers recognized that a deep rift had developed between the sisters, one neither publicly addressed nor attempted to mend. Privately, Lee often confided that Aristotle had once been hers until Jacqueline intervened, a painful repetition of a pattern dating back to their youth when Lee felt overshadowed by her sister's charm and influence. This personal betrayal was only one facet of Lee's troubles. Her relationship with her daughter Christina also deteriorated over time. Christina struggled with self-esteem, particularly around her weight, a sensitivity exacerbated by having a beautiful and slender mother like Lee. The mother-daughter relationship grew strained, with Christina becoming increasingly distant and uncomfortable around Lee. Feeling neglected and judged, Christina found solace and warmth in Jacqueline's presence. Eventually, Christina decided to move out and live with her Aunt Jacqueline, who resided just a few blocks away. She left quietly, packing her belongings without informing her mother, a move that deepened Lee's feelings of jealousy and further widened the gulf between the sisters. Amidst this family turmoil, Lee sought comfort and a renewed sense of purpose through the arts. She developed friendships with artists and creatives, which helped reignite her career aspirations and offered a welcome distraction from her personal struggles. While her relationship with Jacqueline remained complicated and marked by rivalry, Lee found new meaning and resilience in her artistic pursuits, carving out her own path despite the shadows cast by family drama. Connection with Truman Capote and pursuit of an acting career. In the 1960s, as the close bond between Lee and her sister Jacqueline began to wane, Lee sought comfort and inspiration from new artistic circles. She developed friendships with some of the era's most celebrated figures, including ballet legends Rudolf Nureyev and Margot Fonteyn, as well as Cecil Beaton, the famed photographer and designer. Among these new acquaintances, Lee also became one of Truman Capote's famous swans, an exclusive group of elegant, influential women who captivated the writer's attention. Lee and Truman shared a special connection, both feeling marginalized in their respective worlds. Truman, openly gay, often faced rejection within elite social circles, while Lee lived much of her life in the shadow of her glamorous older sister, Jacqueline. This mutual sense of being second best forged a strong bond between them. After Jacqueline's 1968 marriage to Aristotle Onassis, a man Lee herself had admired, Lee turned to Truman in tears, struggling to accept the reality of her sister marrying the man she believed should have been hers. Truman, eager to support Lee and help her step out of Jacqueline's shadow, encouraged her to pursue an acting career. In 1967, Lee began training at prestigious institutions like the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art and the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. Truman suggested she make her acting debut in Philip Barry's comedy, The Philadelphia Story, playing the role of Tracy Lord, a sophisticated, spirited socialite. Thanks to her status as Jacqueline Kennedy's sister, Lee's debut attracted intense media attention. However, the critics were unforgiving. The Chicago Tribune declared, "A new star is not born," while others criticized her performance as stiff and unconvincing. Despite the harsh reception, Lee remained determined to pursue acting. Truman continued to champion her, persuading producer David Susskind to cast Lee in a television adaptation of the 1944 Otto Preminger classic, Laura, a role originally made famous by Gene Tierney, who Lee greatly admired. Truman even co-wrote the script for the TV version, which aired in January 1968 on ABC, yet critical opinion remained unchanged. The New York Times critic Jack Gould noted that while Lee was attractive, no one expected her to deliver a sublime acting performance. Discouraged, Lee returned to London, her hopes of stardom fading. During this period, Lee's friendship with Truman Capote began to unravel. Their relationship soured over Lee's refusal to testify in a libel suit between Truman and writer Gore Vidal. Truman had accused Vidal of being expelled from the Kennedy White House for drunkenness, while Vidal contended he was merely escorted to his hotel following a clash with Attorney General Robert Kennedy. Without Lee's testimony, Truman lost the case and was forced to apologize. This legal defeat strained their friendship, but the final rupture came when Truman betrayed Lee's trust by publicly revealing her private confessions, particularly about her complicated relationship with Jacqueline and her innermost thoughts. Truman was notorious for collecting the secrets of his famous friends, possibly intending to use them in a definitive book, which ultimately was never published. However, a few leaked pages disclosed many confidential details, sparking scandal. This betrayal turned Truman into a social pariah, with many distancing themselves from him. For Lee, though, the damage was already done. Their friendship was shattered, and the wounds left by Truman's actions lingered long after. Discovering passion. Success. As an interior decorator, while Lee initially pursued acting, she soon discovered her true gift lay in design and fashion. She briefly ventured into interior design by working with Italian stage designer Lorenzo Mongiardino to decorate the beautiful Turville Grange estate, which she shared with her second husband. Their work on the interiors was so stunning that iconic photographers like Horst P. Horst and Cecil Beaton frequently captured the home, drawing inspiration from its elegant and refined style. Encouraged by this recognition, Lee decided to focus her talents on interior design. One of her notable projects involved designing a home for clients who only stayed there a few days each year. The success of this project inspired Lee to launch her own interior design firm in 1976. Her sophisticated work quickly gained attention, earning positive media coverage, including a feature in Architectural Digest. This exposure helped attract both corporate clients and wealthy private patrons eager for her distinctive style. Lee's impeccable fashion sense was formally recognized in 1996 when she was inducted into the Vanity Fair International Best Dressed Hall of Fame. Her refined taste extended beyond clothing to her living spaces. She owned stylish residences such as a Paris apartment on Avenue Montaigne and a Manhattan home on East 72nd Street, both celebrated for their elegance. Elle Decor magazine featured her homes in their April 2009 issue, highlighting her sophisticated approach to interior design. In February 2013, Lee appeared in a cover story for the New York Times Style magazine, where she spoke about her life and the importance of privacy in an interview conducted by director Sofia Coppola. Later that year, The Guardian honored Lee's enduring influence on fashion and style by naming her one of the 50 most stylish people over the age of 50. Jacqueline's death and will, including Lee's children. After Jacqueline Kennedy married Aristotle Onassis, her relationship with her sister Lee grew increasingly strained. Rumors of trouble in Jacqueline's marriage began to surface not long after the wedding, and the bond between the sisters continued to weaken. Eventually, Jacqueline's marriage to Aristotle ended, and she chose to spend more time in New York, where her children were attending school. When Aristotle passed away in 1975, Jacqueline inherited an estimated $20 to $26 million. However, the bulk of his fortune went to his daughter, Christina Onassis. Following Aristotle's death, Jacqueline shifted her focus toward a new chapter in her life, one that allowed her to pursue her intellectual and cultural passions. She joined Doubleday as an associate and later a senior editor before taking on a consulting role at Viking Press. In addition to her publishing career, she remained actively involved in historic preservation and the arts. One of her most notable efforts was her instrumental role in the successful 1970s campaign to save New York City's Grand Central Terminal, preserving the iconic structure for future generations. In her personal life, Jacqueline was often linked romantically to various men, but her longest and most significant relationship after Aristotle was with Maurice Tempelsman, a Belgian-born diamond merchant. He became her loyal companion and partner for the final 12 years of her life. In 1994, Jacqueline was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and passed away shortly thereafter at her New York City apartment. She was buried at Arlington National Cemetery beside her first husband, President John F. Kennedy, and their two deceased children. After her death, Jacqueline's will revealed a final and telling chapter in the long-standing rift between her and Lee. While she made generous provisions for her children, close associates, and charitable causes, she left nothing to her sister Lee. Instead, she bequeathed $500,000 each to Lee's children, Anthony and Tina. In the will, Jacqueline stated that she had done all she could for Lee during her lifetime and saw no reason to leave her anything further. This omission underscored the depth of their estrangement, marking the conclusion of a complex and often painful sisterhood. Lee Radziwill's death. After Jacqueline Kennedy married Greek shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis, tensions between her and her sister Lee grew significantly. Their once close bond began to unravel as rumors of trouble in Jacqueline's marriage surfaced. Eventually, the marriage came to an end, and Jacqueline chose to settle in New York, where her children were enrolled in school. When Aristotle died in 1975, Jacqueline inherited between $20 to $26 million, though most of his fortune was left to his daughter, Christina Onassis. Following his death, Jacqueline turned her attention to a new phase in her life, focusing on her love for literature and culture. She joined the publishing world, working first as an associate editor and later as a senior editor at Doubleday before consulting for Viking Press. At the same time, she became heavily involved in historic preservation, playing a key role in saving New York City's Grand Central Terminal during the 1970s. Jacqueline also found companionship in Maurice Tempelsman, a Belgian-born diamond dealer who remained her devoted partner for the last 12 years of her life. Though she was occasionally linked to other men, Tempelsman stood out as her most constant presence during those years. In 1994, Jacqueline was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and died shortly thereafter in her New York apartment. She was laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery, alongside her first husband, President John F. Kennedy, and their 2 deceased children. Her will revealed one final rift with her sister Lee. While she generously provided for her children, staff, and charitable causes, she left Lee nothing. Instead, she gave $500,000 each to Lee's children, Anthony and Tina. Jacqueline explained that she had already done enough for Lee during her lifetime, highlighting the unresolved conflict that had defined their strained relationship. Lee's will and how her daughter finally confirms our suspicion. In Lee Bouvier Radzivill's last will and testament, her sole surviving child, Anna Christina Tina Radziwill, is designated as the primary beneficiary of her estate, estimated to be worth $50 million. Surprisingly, her daughter-in-law, Carol DeFalco Radziwill, former star of The Real Housewives of New York City, was entirely omitted from the will, with no mention whatsoever. Lee, the beloved socialite and younger sister of former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, passed away at the age of 85 from natural causes on February 15th at her Upper East Side apartment in Manhattan. The 16-page will, signed by Lee on September 20, 2018, less than 5 months before her death, was filed in New York County in Lower Manhattan on March 22, 2019, and exclusively obtained by Daily Mail TV. Notably, Lee's niece, Caroline Kennedy Schlossberg, or any of her 3 children, Rose, Tatiana, and John, were not mentioned in the will. When Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis passed away in 1994, her will generously allocated $500,000 to each of Lee's children. Since Lee's son, Anthony, had passed away before her, Lee specified in her own will that her only surviving child, Anna Christina Radziwill, also known as Tina, would inherit her estate. The will instructed the executors to sell Lee's co-op apartment at 160 East 72nd Street in Manhattan, where she resided at the time of her death, along with any other associated securities and claims, and distribute the proceeds as part of her residuary estate. Lee had previously split her time between this apartment and a pied-à-terre in Paris, which she listed for sale in 2017 for $4 million as part of downsizing efforts. Lee's own will shed light on a trust set up for her decades earlier by her mother, Janet Lee Auchincloss. This trust, established through an agreement dated August 11, 1975, granted Lee a special power of appointment over the principal of the trust. Tina, as the surviving heir, would become the beneficiary of this and other trusts established in her and her mother's names, although the principal value was not disclosed in the will. That way, Lee sets a new path outside the shadow she lived in. This paragraph, found on page 2 of the will, was the only reference to Jackie in Lee's document. Instead of appointing her daughter Tina or another family member as executors of her will, Lee chose 2 friends for the role: Hamilton South from Cornwall, Connecticut, and Martin B. O'Connor II from Harding Township, New Jersey. South, who was also a close friend of Lee's late niece, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, delivered the eulogy at Lee's Requiem funeral mass at the Church of St. Thomas More in New York City on February 25th. In a rare tweet on that day, the public relations professional wrote, "Lee Radziwill was superior to everyone. She left this world underwhelmed by us all." On the other hand, O'Connor is the managing partner of the law firm of O'Connor, Morse and O'Connor in Elizabeth, New Jersey. In a letter from Lee to O'Connor dated August 22, 2018, she stated, "In my will, which I signed today, I have named you and Hamilton South as co-executors. You have acted as my attorney in the past. We have been friends for many years, and I have great confidence in your integrity and abilities." Furthermore, Lee emphasized in her letter to O'Connor the importance of his financial expertise in her decision to appoint him as co-executor. She also designated him and Hamilton as successor co-trustees under the revocable trust agreement. Depending on the value of Lee's probated estate, the executors could earn commissions ranging from 2 to 4%, as outlined in her letter. For example, if the probate estate were valued at $1,000, the executor would be entitled to receive commissions of $34,000, based on New York State statutory rates. In addition to providing legal advice, O'Connor, who is married to former Vanity Fair features editor Jane Sarkin, has accompanied Lee to social events in New York City, such as art gallery receptions. Lee's relationship with her daughter-in-law, Carol, fluctuated over the years following the tragic deaths of Anthony Radziwill and his cousin, John F. Kennedy Jr. in 1999. However, they remained close and supported each other, particularly after Anthony's passing. In a heartfelt tribute to Lee written for Daily Mail TV shortly after her death, Carol reflected on their bond, despite the absence of direct family ties. She described how Lee always introduced her as her daughter-in-law, even though they didn't have children together. Despite not being able to meet in person shortly before Lee's passing, they had a final phone conversation 2 weeks prior. Lee's funeral, designed by David Mann, attracted numerous prominent figures from the worlds of fashion, publishing, and society. After the service, Lee's remains were cremated and her ashes were later given to Tina. Despite her financial struggles during her lifetime, Lee specified in her will that her funeral expenses be paid promptly and instructed against any attempts to avoid paying death taxes through extraordinary means or loopholes. Lee's legacy. Despite facing jealousy, professional setbacks, and tumultuous relationships, Lee Radziwill ultimately achieved significant success through her impeccable sense of style. Museums now showcase her exceptional aesthetic vision through exhibitions in her former residences, even though she sold her Paris pied-à-terre in her later years. Lee's trailblazing fashion choices, such as her distinctive sunglasses and classic pillbox hats reminiscent of Jacqueline Kennedy's, continue to captivate audiences long after her passing. Despite her discreet approach to wealth management, the magnitude of her inheritance upon her death in February 2019 touched many. Until her passing at the age of 85, Lee Radziwill remained an enigmatic figure, captivating audiences with her aristocratic charm and worldly intelligence. Despite often being overshadowed by her sister, Lee led a prolific life filled with remarkable achievements and enduring style. So, what do you think of Lee Radziwill? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Tap on the link that pops up on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.